Breaking college football news, the first domino falls in the new coaching carousel as the Virginia Tech Hokies plan to hire James Franklin as their next head coach, according to our Matt Zenitz. Franklin, of course, coming by way of Penn State, where he was head coach there for 12 years. He won a lot, just didn't win the big ones. Well, a year ago, only a play or two from the national championship game. Let's bring in Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli from the Cover 3 podcast. And this was a guy, Chip, I thought could have gotten another job in the Big Ten or maybe even the SEC. What does it mean to you that he decided to go ahead and jump into the ACC for really a second-tier ACC job?
Chris, two things. Number one, that he did his homework. And I think about the fact that Virginia Tech's last head coach is a former James Franklin defensive coordinator in Brent Pry. He certainly had a lot of time and a lot of conversations to get an idea, a lay of the land of what he would be walking into. I think it also affirms that financial commitment that Virginia Tech has talked about making in its football program to change a program that had championship expectations in the ACC, but was spending near the bottom of the conference. And so to James Franklin, that means you are getting a head coach who is used to having the kind of resources and putting them to good use. In the same way that James Franklin modernized Penn State, he can modernize Virginia Tech. I think that if James Franklin is saying yes to Virginia Tech, it means they have met all of his requests, and it means that Virginia Tech football is going to be in a much better place here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think James Franklin taking this Virginia Tech job just reaffirms something I thought from meeting him a few times. It's that he's a very smart man. He knows what job he should be taking, because I think this Virginia Tech job is perfect for him. Chris, you mentioned the possibility of taking a Big Ten gig. If he couldn't win the Big Ten at Penn State, what school is he going to go to in the Big Ten where he feels like he's going to have a better shot to win that league than at Penn State? Meanwhile, he's going to Virginia Tech. And if we think back to how James Franklin got to where he is, it was by taking over at Vanderbilt and building a program from the rubble and turning it into a 9-win team, something that we had not seen. And now, obviously, Clark Lee is kind of doing the same thing with the Commodores. Then he went to Penn State and took over that program while it was still in the rubble, following the Joe Paterno and the Jerry Sandusky scandal that leveled that program for a few years. And he built it into the program that became the one where he was no longer good enough for it because he wasn't winning the big games. So now he's going to Virginia Tech, a program that's in the same footprint where he's had a ton of success recruiting for Penn State, where he's still going to be able to use all those connections, and he's taking a program that needs to be rebuilt, something he's done twice before. I think this is a great hire for Virginia Tech, and I think it's a great hire for James Franklin.
All right, let's get letter grades from both of you. Chip, what do you give Virginia Tech for getting the first domino to fall and getting their guy, James Franklin?
Anytime you get your guy, that's an A+. I mean, I got to think that there's no way that you're going to have a downside to this. They would love to be losing big stakes games, Chris. This is a program that has not been in the postseason since 2020, and at one time was the gold standard for consecutive seasons of getting to bowl games. No, with how far that program has fallen, they would love to be routinely in top 10 on top 10 games. So yeah, A+ for me.
I'm going to go A++ just to one-up Chip, because I do think that this is a fantastic hire for the Hokies. And I just think that overall, when you look at the entire picture, yes, he was the top target. Yes, they got him. And when you look at like the jobs that are available right now across the country, you know, Florida's open, LSU's open. For Virginia Tech to zero in on James Franklin and get this done while those other schools are kind of sitting around and waiting on other targets who aren't nearly as accomplished as James Franklin, grand slam hire for the Hokies.
You mentioned the LSU job, and that's one that's been in the news today because there are rumors/reports that LSU has Lane Kiffin's family on campus, giving him a tour of Baton Rouge. How quickly do you expect this thing to start moving now with the first domino to go, Tom?
I think it really depends on the context of the situation. I think some schools are still going to be moving at the same rate they have been. But if you're somebody like Florida or you're LSU and you're looking at Lane Kiffin's currently coaching an 11-1 Ole Miss team that will be in the college football playoff. Is he going to leave the team during the season to take your job while they're going to still be in the playoffs? Or is Ole Miss going to force him to leave if he doesn't make a decision soon? So I think it really depends on the gig. I think some of the jobs we could see filled within the next few weeks here, especially after the regular season wraps up. But I still think that for the bigger jobs who are waiting out the big fish, it's going to be about another 3 or 4 weeks before we see it start moving.
Okay, first in the non-Lane division, I think Arkansas, UCLA, some of those jobs we might see more movement on, especially as some of their targets wrap up their regular season. I do think it makes sense, if I am the Kiffins, to use the off week to go and check out where you might live. You're doing your research. This is all going to come down to Lane Kiffin making a decision, likely before the Egg Bowl. I understand why you're going to think about Florida and LSU and Ole Miss. I understand why, as an Ole Miss fan, you're frustrated. But I think that we'll know when the Egg Bowl starts what the future of all those parties involved are going to be.
Chip, what do you think this means for Shane Beamer and South Carolina?
Shane Beamer might be okay at South Carolina. Mike Norvell might be okay at Florida State. You know, places that might have zeroed in on James Franklin. You know, now all of a sudden you're starting to reconsider the math. You're starting to look around and maybe wait for some other dominoes to fall to see what the candidates list is. You know, South Carolina could be frustrated, especially in the wake of blowing that lead to Texas A&M. But are emotions going to make the decisions? Or, you know, are you going to make the financial commitment necessary to buy him out, bring someone else new in? Yeah, James Franklin off the market to Virginia Tech might actually cool some hot seats across the country.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that this makes Shane Beamer safe at South Carolina, because I think what it really does is it just kind of eliminates an easy exit ramp for both parties, in which if Shane Beamer wanted to reset the clock, Virginia Tech obviously made a lot of sense for him, considering his father, you know, is the one who built that program. So it made sense for him to, quote unquote, go home to take that gig. But I still don't know that South Carolina is exactly happy with Shane Beamer right now after they blew that lead against Texas A&M. So I don't know what exactly the future holds in Columbia, South Carolina with the Gamecocks, but we probably won't find out until after that Clemson game. I suggest Shane wins it.
I would say eyes to Auburn, too, as things are starting to wind down. You know, any of those other jobs where Franklin might have been there, potentially in the mix, he's gone. And so now it's we can sort of sharpen our focus on literally the same pool of candidates for a lot of these jobs. Ole Miss, as it does its research of who they would hire if Lane does end up taking the Florida or the LSU job. So it'll be interesting to see who moves first to grab one of those qualified candidates.
Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli with us here as James Franklin heads to Blacksburg to take over at Virginia Tech to replace Brent Pry, his former coordinator at Penn State. 8 other power conference jobs are still to be filled, and more could potentially open. You have several in the SEC and the Big Ten as well. Cover 3 podcast will keep you current on everything going on today upon further review, recapping the new AP poll that came out today, looking ahead to tomorrow's CFP poll, and 100% certain we'll be hearing a little something from the Cover 3 guys in podcast form on Virginia Tech hiring James Franklin.